The shocking truth about Chrysler's 340 V8 engine, small in size, big in power. They said size was everything, that big blocks ruled the streets, that anything under 400 cubic inches was just a grocery getter. But Chrysler had other plans. In a move that defied Detroit logic and threatened the sacred muscle car hierarchy, the 340 small block was born not with headlines, but with horsepower. Lightweight, overbuilt, and dangerously underrated, this was the engine that turned compact cars into quarter-mile killers. This isn't just about displacement, it's about deception, domination, and defiance. Chrysler's 340 wasn't trying to be loud. It just was loud where it mattered at the track on the street, and deep in the memories of every Mopar diehard who ever lit up the tires on a backroad drag strip. Welcome to Muscle Car Masters. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment with your favorite Mopar memory. Let's fire it up. In the late 1960s, Chrysler's big block machines like the 383 Magnum 446-pack and the almighty 426 Hemi dominated headlines. But something was missing. While Ford had the lightweight 289 Hypo and GM ruled with the legendary 327, Mopar didn't have a rev-happy lightweight fighter for its smaller cars. That all changed in 1968. Quietly and almost strategically, Chrysler released the 340 cubic inch small block, a purpose-built brawler designed not for trophies, but for takeovers. This wasn't just a bored-out 318 or a hopped-up 273. It was an all-new weapon. With a forged steel crankshaft, high nickel content block, oversized valves, and a cam profile designed for high RPM assaults, the 340 wasn't just fast. It was born to be abused. From the factory, the 340 was rated at 275 horsepower and 340 pound-feet of torque. But dyno tests told a different story. Real-world output often pushed 310 to 325 horsepower with no internal modifications. Its bore measured 4.04 inches, stroke was 3.31, and it had a sky-high 10.5 to 1 compression ratio. It breathed through a Carter AVS 4-barrel carburetor and redlined at 6,000 RPM high for the era, especially for a factory small block. This wasn't some mild-mannered economy motor. It was a street assassin in iron disguise. What made the 340 so unique was that it wasn't built for sanctioned racing series or elite-level competition. It was built for the people, for the weekend wrenchers, the midnight racers, the everyday car guys who wanted power without the Hemi price tag. According to Warren Fillmore, a retired Chrysler engine development engineer, we made it thick, strong, and simple. We knew guys were going to beat on it. That's what it was for. The thick casting walls, the oversized journal design, and even the head bolts all were over-engineered with durability in mind. The 340 could take nitrous high RPM cam profiles and heavy throttle abuse without flinching. But Chrysler didn't shove the 340 into just any car. They chose their lightest, meanest platforms, the Dodge Dart Plymouth Duster and the AAR CUDA. In stock form, these cars weighed between 2,970 and 3,200 pounds, making them deadly when paired with a high-revving small block. Take the 1970 Duster 340. With just under 3,000 pounds, curb weight and factory gearing, it could hit 0 to 60 in 6.2 seconds and complete the quarter mile in 14.3 seconds. The AAR CUDA, a street-legal Trans Am homologation special with the 346-pack, could run the quarter in under 14 seconds and sprint to 60 in 5.8 seconds. These weren't numbers for show. They were results from gas stations, back roads, and track nights across America. And while GM and Ford were building their legends on marketing and magazine tests, the 340 earned its stripes in silence on the streets. It became the preferred weapon of street racers from Detroit to Bakersfield. According to one former racer, known only as Jimmy Cuda, I had a 340 Dart with headers, intake, and slicks. I embarrassed a guy with a 396 Chevelle, twice my budget. He had the chrome. I had the Winlight. The 340's magic wasn't just horsepower. It was the way it delivered it quickly, smoothly, with snappy throttle response and brutal mid-range torque. Even today, the power-to-weight ratio of a Duster 340 holds up surprisingly well. In fact, a lightly modified 340 car can still run with many modern V6 Mustangs or Chargers. But back then, it was nothing short of revolutionary. By 1970, Chrysler pushed the 340 into its most aggressive form, yet not just for the street, but for the track. This wasn't about subtle performance anymore. It was about showing the world that a small block, when tuned right, could deliver big block humiliation. The result was the 346 pack, a triple carbureted beast that ditched the standard 4-barrel Carter in favor of 3 Holley 2-barrels. The intake roar was instant, the throttle response brutal. Chrysler may have rated it at 290 horsepower, but real-world figures often landed between 330 and 350. And more than just peak power, it was the way that power came on fast, sharp, unrelenting. But the path to that six-pack fury didn't come from nowhere. In fact, according to car and driver editor Pat Bedard, who was part of the development team at Chrysler in the late 60s, the 340's very creation was driven by rival envy. As Bedard revealed, we were stymied by how fast the Chevy Nova with the 327 was. So we bought one, tore it down, and studied it. What they found was eye-opening. The high-revving 327, with its L79 heads, was setting the pace on the streets. And in a rare move, Chrysler engineers essentially modeled the 340's cylinder heads after Chevy's L79 design, a quiet moment when Mopar borrowed from the Bowtie playbook to build a true street assassin. But Chrysler wasn't building this version for everyone. This was a weapon designed for homologation aimed squarely at the Trans Am series. To qualify, they had to offer production cars with the same equipment used in the race series. That's where the 1970 Challenger TA and the Plymouth AAR Cuda come in. These weren't just cosmetic packages, they were street-legal race cars. Lightweight fiberglass hoods, side exit exhausts, staggered tire setups, and suspension tuned for real handling, not just straight-line bravado. Under the hood, the 346 pack gave these cars the punch they needed. Both cars ran sub-14-second quarter miles, and their aggressive looks made sure you didn't mistake them for anything ordinary. But just as the 340 reached its mechanical peak, something darker was unfolding behind the scenes. Starting in 1971, Detroit was hit by what many called a necessary wave of reform. But to the gearheads, racers, and engineers in the trenches, it felt more like a strategic takedown, a silent war on horsepower. The federal government, under increasing pressure from environmental movements, insurance lobbyists, and changing public sentiment, passed sweeping emissions and safety regulations. On paper, it was about cleaner air. In practice, it was the beginning of the end for performance. Compression ratios were the first to fall. The 340 dropped from a punchy 10.5 to 1 down to a tamed 8.5 to 1 in just 1 year. Camshaft profiles were dulled, timing curves neutered. But here's where things get suspicious. According to retired Chrysler engineer Don Whitaker, who worked in engine validation from 1969 to 1973, we were already developing lower emission builds for the 340 that still made power. But every time we got close, the goalposts moved. Suddenly, we had to add more restrictions, cut more timing. It felt like the engine was being deliberately choked out. It wasn't just federal red tape. Insurance companies began slamming high premiums on anything with a 4-barrel carburetor and dual exhaust, regardless of actual emissions. According to an internal memo leaked in 1972, Chrysler's marketing division was advised to avoid promoting 340-equipped cars as performance vehicles, fearing pushback from lawmakers and insurers alike. And here's the real kicker. The 340 was never actually banned by law. It just became impossible to sell. Regulations didn't outlaw it outright. They made it unprofitable, uninsurable, and invisible in showrooms. Some in the Mopar community still call it a regulatory assassination. The specs were still decent. 240 net horsepower in 1972, but the soul was gone. The intake growl was muffled. The throttle no longer snapped. The 340 didn't scream anymore. It sighed. Despite its neutering, the 340 still retained some of its magic. It revved cleanly, responded well to tuning, and had a forged bottom end most modern engines could envy. But it was no longer a priority for Chrysler. In a market increasingly obsessed with economy and insurance rates, the days of high-strung street brawlers were fading fast. By 1973, the 340 was found only in select trims, often stripped of its previous glory. Then, in 1974, it disappeared altogether. No press release, no final edition. It was gone as quietly as it had arrived. In its place came the 360, a softer, less aggressive successor that never captured the same cult following. The 340 never wore a Hemi badge or earned headlines, but it earned its legacy in garages, street corners, and midnight drag strips across America. Dart swingers, Duster, 340s, and AAR Cudas weren't just cars, they were survivors of a raw mechanical era. Collectors still revere the 340 for its simplicity, durability, and spirit. No electronics, no frills, just forged steel and fire. Even today, its distinct high-rev snarl lives on at cruise nights, a symbol of freedom, rebellion, and the belief that small blocks could do big things. The 340 didn't die. It went underground, waiting for its next roar. So, what about you? Have you ever sat behind the wheel of a 340-powered machine or watched one scream past you at a midnight stoplight battle? Drop your story in the comments and tell us where you stand in the great small block debate. For more legends like this, rare finds, and untold truths of American muscle, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell. This is Muscle Car Masters, where engines never die and stories always roar back to life.